All right. So basically, guys, what we're doing, I need to show you guys this part, is we're going to talk about how the Constitution created the national judiciary. So we're going to talk, well, it's kind of misleading. We're going to talk a little bit about the federal court systems today and how it's set up, but we're actually going to take notes on how the state court system works. So there's going to be a little bit of writing until today because there's a lot of information I'm going to give you. All right. So we're just going to start with the definitions that is on the handout that I gave you at the bottom in Part B. I think there's 6 of them, right? I know you guys have probably seen plaintiff and defendant, so I'm not extremely worried that you know what those are. I am, however, under the suspicion that you probably don't know what any of the other ones are. Okay? So, with that being said, we're going to talk about these definitions and hopefully they make sense. Now, if you'll notice at the bottom of your paper, you've got 4 of the 6 is dealing with some type of jurisdiction. You guys see what I'm talking about there? Exclusive, concurrent, original, and appellate, right? But it doesn't really ask you what jurisdiction is, okay? So somewhere on your paper in a text box underneath that, I would like for you to put down jurisdiction, and we're going to fill that definition in. So you're going to have to write that one out, and then we'll fill out the rest of it here in a second, okay? So again, somewhere on the bottom of your paper or in the middle of it, I don't care. Let's figure out where we can put just a simple jurisdiction, okay? Now, the jurisdiction that you guys probably know deals with police officers, right? If I'm a Town of Hillsville police officer, where can I pull you over and write you a ticket at? Within the Town of Hillsville, right? State trooper can pull you over at any point in Virginia, right? Carroll County police officer can write you a ticket anywhere in Carroll County. Now, here's a question for you, see if you guys understand this. If you get caught speeding in Carroll County and a Carroll County police officer is pursuing you and you get into Galax and he pulls you over in Galax, can he write you a ticket? Yes. The pursuit happened in his jurisdiction. Does that make sense? You broke the law where he had jurisdiction. So don't just think you can outrun them. The best way to remember is that you're not going to outrun Motorola. You got me? If you get in a car chase, they're just going to phone ahead like, hey, this moron's driving through at 100. Just go ahead and pull him over. You know what I mean? If you don't, that's just how it works. Remember that, Linkus. I feel like I need to be talking to you with that. Okay? All right. So, beside a jurisdiction, all I want you to write down is the area of authority. Okay? Area of authority. Now, this works along the same lines for the court systems. Each court has a specific jurisdiction that they deal with. Does everybody understand me? So, what they have to deal with on a daily basis is the fact that what type of court case they can hear and what type of verdict they can give, because each one of them is different. So we're going to talk a little bit about these jurisdictions, and I need you to make them make sense today. You need to know the difference in these. Okay? So, let's start with, it kind of jumps around, but on your paper, the second one down, it says concurrent jurisdiction. If you notice on the board, it says that concurrent jurisdiction is when the federal and state courts both have the power to hear a case. Let's put this pretty simple. Put down that the federal and state courts share jurisdiction. And that is with concurrent. That means that the case can be heard in a federal court or in a state court. So they share jurisdiction. And most cases that involve something like that is when a perpetrator has broken a state and federal law. Like, for example, if I am speeding on Interstate 77 and I'm carrying 100 pounds worth of narcotics. Obviously, the speeding ticket's a state deal, right? The narcotics is a federal deal. They're probably not even going to worry about the speeding ticket if I've got 100 pounds of narcotics. You see what I'm getting at? But that's just an example of how they could share it. Okay? So concurrent jurisdiction, excuse me, is when both the federal and state courts deal with it. All right? The next one we got up there, we're going to skip over plaintiff and defendant for a minute because I feel like you guys probably have an idea of that. Let's go up to go down to the bottom where it says original jurisdiction. Guys, if you are an original individual, that means you normally are the first one to do something, right? You came up with something first. When it comes to original jurisdiction with the courts, that is when a court case can hear a case first. That's where it would start. So beside of original, just put down it's when a court case is where a court case is first heard. Okay? So it's when a court case is first heard. So if, like the Supreme Court, do you think they have original jurisdiction? Could a court case start in the Supreme Court if they wanted it to? Yeah. Okay? And we'll talk about some of the other ones and how it works in it as well. All right? The next one, appellate. If I take off the LATE on appellate, you have the word appeal. If I am appealing something, that means I didn't like the outcome that I originally got, so I am reviewing it or sending it for review somewhere else. You guys understand that? So when you are appealing something, put down that that is a court case that is heard on review. It means it's already been heard and someone's going to hear it again. So it is a court case heard on review. So far, so simple. Those are fairly easy, I think. Pretty self-explanatory stuff. All right? And then the last type of jurisdiction that we have is up there at the top. I don't think there's an actual definition in here with it. No. But you have the word exclusive jurisdiction. When you are exclusive, guys, that means that only one individual deals with it. That's from just a basic standpoint. From a jurisdiction standpoint, beside of exclusive, put down that is when only the federal courts have that jurisdiction. Only the federal courts have exclusive jurisdiction, meaning they are the only ones that can deal with it. Okay? Everybody with me thus far? Makes sense? Yes? No? All right. Now, let's go back up to the top of this paper, answer these questions, and then we're actually going to get into the fun stuff, I think. Okay? So, numero uno up here, it says, what did Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution define? Guys, pretty simple. Okay? It says, Article 3 gave Congress the power to create the rest of the federal court system, which it did in 1789. So, to answer number 1, put down that it created the National Judicial Branch. It created the National Judicial Branch. Now, here's a question I am going to ask you again, Lincoln. If you can stay awake long enough to take notes. Think you can handle that? Okay. How many courts did the Constitution create? Does anybody know? Not everybody at one time.
Is it a small number?
It's a very small number. 1. The only court that the Constitution has anything written about in it is the U.S. Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court. Y'all with me? Now, do we have more than the Supreme Court now? Obviously, we have hundreds of courts, right? So, what the Constitution did was created the U.S. Supreme Court and then gave it to the ability to create other courts. Gave Congress the idea to create the rest of the federal court system. Y'all with me? So, Article 1 created the National Judicial Branch, or excuse me, Article 3, Section 1 created the National Judicial Branch. You will see that question again. I will ask you, what did Article 3 create? You need to know it was the judicial branch. Has everybody got me? All right. Number 2 and number 3, put a star beside of these. These are important. All right. They're asking you what are constitutional and then what are special courts, and they are on the board. Now, before I answer any of this stuff, okay, here's the idea. All courts that have ever been created are inferior to the Supreme Court. What do I mean by that? If you are inferior to something, what does that mean? You're below it, right? You're beneath it, so to speak. So, the Supreme Court is the most superior court we have. Y'all with me? So the only thing that is above it is nothing. Every other court is below it. So what is the difference between a constitutional court and a special court? Number 2 asks you, what is a constitutional court? If you look in your notes, it says that they exercise the judicial power of the U.S. and hear a wide range of cases dealing with federal law. All right? Here's how I'm going to put it, and here's how I want you to remember it. Beside of constitutional courts, put down that these are called regular courts. These are called regular courts. that Congress formed. Okay, that Congress formed. And then lastly, put down that they have broad judicial powers. So they're called regular courts that are formed by Congress that has broad judicial powers. So basically these constitutional courts can hear a wide range of cases. Is everybody with me on that? They have broad power so they can hear a broad amount of cases. So far so simple? Now in number 3 it asks you what special courts are. Well, pretty simple. They're special courts. All right? They are sometimes called, put down, legislative courts. And then put down that they hear a narrow range of cases. They have a very specific type of jurisdiction. They hear a narrow range of cases. So here's what I mean by this. If I were to say the United States Supreme Court, would that be a constitutional or special court? Does the U.S. Supreme Court hear a broad range of stuff or very specific stuff? It's very broad. They can hear about anything. They can choose. Now, here's a special court. What if I said the United States Tax Court? Is that special or is that constitutional? That's special. It deals with what? Taxes, a very specific thing. So it would be a special court. Does everybody understand that? U.S. Court of Appeals, constitutional, very broad. United States Court of Veteran Claims, special, very specific. You guys understand how that works? So that is the difference. Constitutional, broad range of power. Special courts, very specific range of power. All right? Now, number 4, I don't even know why they put this question on here. It says, under what circumstances may federal courts hear a case? All right? I can't remember if the notes, yeah, they do. They offer you different types of court cases, but I really don't want to get into a lot of these, so I'm going to give you 3 of them. Where it says, under what circumstances may federal courts hear a case? Okay? Number 1, put down they hear cases dealing with constitutional issues. Common sense. If there's a problem with the U.S. Constitution, a federal court will deal with it. So they deal with constitutional issues. The second type of case they deal with is anything that has to do with a foreign government. The state of Virginia isn't going to try a case over the country of Iran. The U.S. court system would do that. So number 2 would be any type of foreign government. And then the third thing I want you to put down that federal courts deal with is a case about one of the 50 states. If there's an issue with one of the 50 states, then the federal court system would deal with it. You need to know those 3. I will ask you that on a test or quiz. You'll need to know that the U.S. court systems deal with any type of federal case that belongs to constitutional issues, foreign governments, or a case that deals with one of the 50 states. Okay? Now, guys, there's a bunch more ideas that they deal with, but those are the only 3 that really matter to me that you get. Okay? Is everybody with me so far? All right. Now, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is a really neat deal, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this, okay? If I can get down to it. I've already done the jurisdictions. That one, for whatever, is blank. We'll talk about all that later. All right. Now, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is talking about the procedure of how we get federal court judges and justices put in place. So, we need to talk something about this. Number 5 says, what is the procedure for the selection of a federal judge? So how does someone become a federal judge? Who has to appoint them? The president. So in number 5, put down 1. The president appoints a federal judge. This is on the board if you get confused. The president appoints a federal judge. So they get to choose whoever they desire. Now, just because they choose them, does that mean they get to become a judge? You guys should know this. We had a huge trial with the newest Supreme Court justice, right? She went through a confirmation hearing with the Senate. So he gets to appoint them. Put down number 2. The Senate has to confirm them. The Senate confirms them. Okay? So, if I were to ask you what's the two-step process of appointing a federal judge, you'd tell me what? President appoints them, and who approves them? Senate. Very simple, right? Very simple. Okay? Number 6, it says, what is the primary function of federal judges? Common sense. What does a federal judge do on a daily basis? They hear what? Cases. So simply put down, they hear and decide cases. They hear and decide cases. Now here is number 7 and number 8. Do not get these confused. Number 7 says, how long are the terms of judges for constitutional courts? If I am chosen to be in the U.S. Supreme Court, how long am I appointed for? I am appointed for life. The only way I get out of that is death, resignation, impeachment, or I retire. Y'all got me? So, if you are appointed to a constitutional court, such as the U.S. Supreme Court, you are appointed for life. The reason they do that is because they don't want the appointees to feel like they are being held down by the president who appointed them. Does that make sense? They don't have to feel obligated to do what those presidents think they should. They are free from executive control because they are appointed for life. Yes?
Do we have to type in like how to get out of it?
No, just you know they're for life. Okay? Now that's a constitutional court. Y'all with me? Number 8 is asking you, how long are the terms of judges in special courts? Now obviously they cannot be for life, because what do you think the judges in those courts are ultimately trying to do? They're trying to get to the point where they are appointed in a constitutional court for life, right? So obviously you can't be appointed for life in a special court, because if you were, how could you get appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court? You couldn't. See what I'm getting at? So, how long are terms for judges in special courts? This is dependent on what type of court you are in, but for our purposes, write down 8 to 15 years. And depending on how well they do in those is dependent on whether or not they ever reach a constitutional court. Okay? That's a lot of information at you in about 30 minutes there, but does everybody have that down? A lot of this is very important because after lunch we're going to start talking about state courts and how they're set up and how the federal courts are set up, and you just kind of need to know that. So is everybody good there? All right, so we'll just chill out for a minute and then we'll break for lunch because I don't want to start the